Okay, it's 8:01. We're going to go ahead and get this thing started. My name is Patrick Byrne. I'm a Customer Solutions Program Manager here at Tableau. I help manage the Tableau community forums and our community forums ambassadors. Today for our Think Data Thursday, we have David Pires coming to talk about the 2019-2 action parameters. David is from just outside of London and works for Interworks. He's a Tableau social media ambassador, so definitely follow him on Twitter because he's very active and shares some awesome vizzes all the time. And he has been using Tableau since 2015. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to David.
Hello, good afternoon. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, come through just fine.
Perfect. And last tech check of the afternoon. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you everyone for tuning in for Think Data Thursday this week. It's a pleasure to be talking about parameter actions, particularly because this has been a feature that I've spoken to the development team for quite a while before joining the current job that I'm in at Interworks, but also when I used to be a customer. And I wanted to be able to do some of the things that parameter actions allow me to do, but at the time wasn't possible. So when this was announced back in New Orleans last year, I was really, really excited. And I kind of complimented everyone around me from the dev team that it's a transformative feature in the way that you can interact with Tableau. And we'll look at it, why it's so transformative, but also, so for the next 45 minutes, what I would like to do is to show you some of my own use cases and some ideas that I've been playing around with. And that's not all of the ideas I have. There's still a few things that I would like to be able to do with parameter actions. I will share the workbook after today. I'll write some blogs so that you can get a step-by-step on how I've used that in some of the techniques. But also, importantly, I would like to show you some of the use cases that the community have already been putting out. So people like Lindsay Poulter, the brothers, Flaridge, Mark Reed, Ryan Sleeper. There's a number of them. They've already written blogs and also have showed some really good use cases. So we'll cover those later on today. So before we get into that, it's important to understand what is a parameter action for those that are not familiar with that yet. So what are parameter actions? So parameters in Tableau are constant values. They are key components in many analytic scenarios. And of course, they can be used in calculations, in references, table calculations, and define analytic indicators. You can also use them quantitatively and as a filter within a single data source or across multiple data sources. You can, of course, optimize live connection queries, and you can do a lot more on that. So parameter actions, in short, add interactivity to all of these scenarios. And the interactivity is the key aspect of a parameter action. So before, you could already use a parameter, but you had to go and click on the button, and that doesn't allow you to pass a value based on an action. And if you're familiar with actions within filters, you can use that. So this came from product manager Philippos at Tableau. I had the pleasure of speaking to him last month for a podcast, and we talked about all the new features in 2019.2. Philippos is also really excited about the feature, and he just looks to see more use cases around that. He is also on Twitter, so if you have any more ideas and you'd like to share some of the ways that you're using parameter actions, he's really looking forward to get your feedback. So with that, we're going to cover a few examples today, or the next few examples. What I'll do is I'll show you the example, I'll show you how it's put together, and we have about 7 of those to go through. So this one is very, very simple, and this is based on a selection of a number of data points within a scatter plot that could be elsewhere, and this was already in the beta version so that we could test it out. How does that work? So we have a parameter here on the right-hand side, but you can take a look at that, but we're not going to touch that at all. So the idea is that you click on something and that's going to give you value. So the average sales for that, of course, is the same. But the interesting point is that when you start using the lasso functionality in Tableau, you can start having that calculation as an average. And then you can do the same for all of these marks. You can see that the selection for those 4 marks, the average sales is 116,000. So how is this put together? Let's delve into that. The first thing you need to look at is to create a parameter. So you have a parameter here, and what we have is a floating parameter with the current value. One thing that I would say, whenever you're working with parameter actions, most of the time you actually are going to be passing a value, because that value can be anything that you want when you're creating it, because that's going to change when you have the ability to interact with it. I only changed the display format because I wanted it to be a little bit tidier. So that's done. That's our parameter. And everything else is a very simple visualization. So we have a subcategory in detail, we have profit on columns, and we have sales on rows. Now the trick happens on the actual dashboard, on the actions. So if you haven't seen this menu, you have your source worksheet, and that is the worksheet that we're working with. We're going to target a parameter, which is the parameter where we just looked at, and we're going to target that against the field. So that field in this case is going to be our sum of sales. But instead of summing it up, I would like to have an average of those that I've selected. So Tableau will look at the values for each of the data points you have, sum that up and average it. So there you go. So that's your aggregation, and of course you could have something like sum or maximum or something like that. In this case, we're going to do that as an average. That's how it works. It's very, very simple, and I think it's very effective, but it just provides a little bit more information to your users. The next option is very similar, and the only thing we're going to tweak that a little bit is that instead of using a measure, we're going to do that with a dimension. How does that look like? So we have the selection average sales. You already know how this works. But then we can look at number of manufacturers. So if I highlight, I have 3 manufacturers. So I have Global HON and GBC. However, if I select these 3, I have other and Logitech. And the number of manufacturers is 2. So sometimes it's interesting to see, okay, I'm looking at my top sales. Are they all coming from one manufacturer? In this case, you can see those 3 are coming from 2 distinct manufacturers. How does that work? Let's go into the worksheet. And we have the manufacturer count. And again, super simple. You add an integer as a parameter. It doesn't really matter what your current value is going to be, because that's going to be passed by your user. We go back into the visualization, look at the action itself. And what we're saying is, again, is to use our source worksheet, use our target parameter, our field, and in this case, instead of using a measure, we're going to use a dimension, and we're going to say, okay, give me the count distinct of manufacturers. And that provides, again, with a little bit of interaction, gives that the user a little bit more information about the visualization that they are looking at. And just in terms of questions, there's a chat is open. So if you have any questions or anything that you're thinking about in terms of the visualization, feel free to paste that in, and we'll tackle those at the end. So this one is another one that I thought it would be interesting to look at. So at the top, you have the sales performance across a timeline. So starts in January 2017 and stops in December 18. And it's shaded, so you have the darker color and almost black. It's your highest value, and almost white or white is going to be your lowest value. So you have January and February, months that we haven't sold as much. Same thing happens then in February 2018. And the chart below is my running sum of sales. Now, what I would like to be able to do is to give the user the ability of filtering the chart below based on what I'm looking at the top. So I don't want to see the whole time series. I want to slice it up depending how I want to look at the data. Say, for instance, I want to see the running total for the last 3 months. I can click in October 2018. You can see the kink there of November, this technology jumping in terms of number of sales. And that gives me the running total from October 2018 down to December 2018. And then if we were to select another month, so in this case, January 2018, we have that as well. You might have seen that the start date keeps changing. That's the parameter. I just left it there so that you could see that changing as we go. For the visualization itself, I probably wouldn't add that in there. So how is this working? So the first thing that we have is a timeline. There's nothing clever about the timeline. It just shows the sales per month over the date. And I've just used the sum of sales within the color shelf so that we can color that and shade it. Then the actual running total, it is a table calculation that you know what to do. So you have your simple table calculation running total. Now, the only thing that changes is the order date. So we have our date, which is my start date. So I just created an order date, and I have June 2017. So I just tidied it up because I only want to see the display as months on the parameter, and then I can go to the order date parameter, edit. I'm just going to make that a little bit bigger so you can read. And what we're saying is we're going to use the order date is greater or equal to the start date, then putting that on the filter. And you can see there it's true. So it will filter anything that is greater or equal to the parameter that gets returned, the rest gets excluded, and that's how we created that here. So if we go into our visualization, then we are saying, okay, use my timeline, use the target parameter, the start date, and I want to pass a value, which is the month of order date with no aggregation, because that's not required. And as you'd expect in all your actions, you have a choice of using hover, of using select, and also of using the menu. So that's something that comes out from all the other actions as well. Again, you have the ability of just clicking on something and just be able to select. And then, of course, as you know, parameters can be used on titles, and that is really handy so you can get that visualization changing as you're using it. So the next example, it's looking at how to sort. So up until recently, sorting in Tableau could be a little bit tricky, particularly if using nested sorting and things like that. And also, I've seen a number of techniques, and myself, I've used a number of techniques of using parameters to do the sorting. But we'll always require the user to click or to select the sort order from a parameter. And in this example, I thought it would be nicer to just allow the user to click on what they want to look at and allow that to be sorted that way. So if I want to just look at the levels of satisfaction within transport in European cities, I want to be able to sort by, well, I'm not that satisfied. I'm able to do that. Of course, the title, as I've shown, is just showing the measures. So let's look at how this one was built. The first thing I want is have a simple chart. So we have our measure names, our measure values, and I have seat in there. The filters don't really matter. And I have measure names, measure values, which is something that I really like about Tableau. Now, I created a parameter that's called measures. And in there, I have a value. So I have very satisfied. So that's all the columns in there. And it's just a string, and it doesn't really matter what the current value is, because, again, we're going to pass that in. And then you might have noticed that there's no actual field within the view that either it's filtering, like in the examples before where we were filtering things. There's nothing happening in it like that. But what it is a field that I've created that allows me to say, to use the parameter. And I'm saying if the parameter is very satisfied, then return the respective measure. And we're doing that for every single measure. We're not bringing that into the view. What we're doing is to go into our sort and having that sorted descending by the actual field name. So it allows us to, without even bringing that field that we created into the view, allows us to have that in there. And then, of course, when I click, and I'm just going to display the parameter. When I click on one parameter, that gets changed, which would be, so in old style, you would use something like that where you'd allow your users to pick from this list how they want to sort it. But I think it's a much better experience to allow our users to just go and click on it and be able to sort it that way. So they can interact with that, and it feels a lot more natural. So if they were to click even on the actual data point, that allows them to sort by that column. That actually might be one of my favorite uses of parameter actions at the moment. The other one is something that I've always wanted to be able to do. Sometimes we have two charts and we want them to be able to scroll at the same time, so synchronized scrolls. And that is something we can't currently do out of the box within Tableau, so linking the two and allow us to scroll. So I thought it would be interesting to see if we could compare that. And the way that I thought about it would be, okay, let's say I have my sales and I have my top customers. So this is sorted my top to bottom customers by sales. The index there is just to give you a sense of where we are in terms of the sorting, to give you that indication. On the actual visualization to be produced, I'll probably won't show. And then you have a discount percentage. So I want to see if the same person that I'm giving a high discount is the same person that is one of my top sales, and you can just compare the two. So for instance, in this case, if I look at my top, my number 10 person that's purchased in terms of sales, they are not the same person that I offer the top 10 in terms of discounts. But now what I want to be able is to be able to sort this. So let's say I want to sort anyone around 100. So I can just hover over on the control line at the top where you have all of the index, and I can see that in 100 I have, actually, sorry. I'll just go back to the view. Okay. So for instance, I have, these are not the same. So the number 100 in terms of sales is not going to be the same in terms of discount. And what you could do, some of this could be done, for instance, with a parameter, and you have steps. So every step that you move will be 10, 20, 30, 40. That's what we used to do sometimes in Tableau when we didn't have parameter actions. But say, for instance, you want to go to the bottom ones really quickly, you can sort that and you can filter those that way. So those are pretty much not getting discounts, and our medium area is around here, and we can see those as well very quickly. I think performance on this one is a lot quicker than I would expect it to be, mainly because we have two tables that we're filtering on the fly with almost 1,000 rows each. So it's really good in terms of performance. So how did we build this? Let's start from the top. So I created a filter control where I have customer name, and I have an index for that. So I just removed the customer name and made the tooltip a little bit better. So that goes from 1 to 773, because that's the number of customers that we have. And I have also that index is created there as a measure. And then within the sales, I have the customer name, I have the index. And the only thing that I did differently was to use an index filter true. So the first thing I'm going to show you is the parameter. So it's an integer and allows me to have a current value. The current value is going to be whatever I select or I hover over within the control sheet. So the bar at the top, that goes from 1 to 773. And then the next thing is I have this filter. So if the combined sort is less or equal to the index, and if it's true, and we're keeping that, so it's applied to true, so we're only returning anything that's over what I'm selecting. So if I select 100, it goes from 100 and upwards. And I did the same thing on the other worksheet, so on the discount, so there's no need to show you that. But then if we go into our actions, so the highlight is just so I could highlight both of my index numbers. But the parameter is where the trick is. So I'm using the filter control, the combine scroll, which is the parameter that we've used. And I'm passing the field from the index. So the index goes and hits the target parameter that gets filtered out within each worksheet. And then the result is that you can just hover over this filter control and allows you to scroll very, very quickly. And of course, I have the number on the title so that we can see where we are. So the next one is going to be a category drill down. I like this one a lot. I see myself using this a ton. It's always been a question, and you could do this to some extent with level of detail calculations, but I feel like this is a much easier and quicker way of creating a natural drill down within the visualization. So let's imagine for a second that, okay, I have technology, furniture, and office supplies. Then the next question is, show me within technology who sold the most. And you can click on it, and that's going to be phones. Okay, fine. How about in furniture? Can you show me that? Sure. We click on furniture, and that opens up the next category to show you the subcategory. Then if you click on one of the subcategories, it goes back up to the category level. So I'll show you that again. So I can click office supplies. That goes down to subcategories. So those are the subcategories within office supplies. If I click one of those, it goes up. That works as well. You don't need to click on the actual chart. You could click on the label itself, and that works equally as well. So let's look at how is this created. Really simple. I'm just going to make that a little bit bigger. I have category. The reason category is here is just so I can have a sorting order. I have sum of sales. It doesn't really matter. You could have profit or something like that. And I have the category drill down. We'll get to that one in a second. We're going to look at the parameter. Again, it's just a simple parameter as a string, allowing me to pass a string to a value. So if I now go and look at my category drill down, just edit that. So I'm just going to make that a little bit easier to read. And what we're saying is, if my parameter equals category, then return subcategory. What does that actually mean? It means that when with the mouse I click office supplies on one of the categories, I want not office supplies to be returned, but the subcategory under office supplies. If then I click something else, in which case the only thing that's possible is going to be a subcategory, then return the category. So to recap, selecting category is going to return subcategory. Selecting subcategory is going to return category, because you want to be able to drill back up in a very, very easy way. And then in the actual view, the way that works is to say, I have a parameter. It's again a category source. A category drill down is my source worksheet. It's the target parameter we looked at, so your category or subcategory. I'm going to apply that to a filter on the category drill down. There's no aggregation. It's a string. I don't need to aggregate it. So I'm just going to be able to pass in this case, and you can see what is being passed at the top. So technology is the one that's being passed. And when you click a subcategory, you have all. So it shows all of them. So you click again on furniture, and then allows you to drill down, click one of those subcategories, and that passes it up, and you're able to drill back up. I feel like this one can be used a lot to provide a little bit of extra functionality for dashboard users when they want to delve into a little bit more information in a very simple and easy way. This one, it's something that I think will be very useful as well. And it's just the ability of synchronizing reference lines. How is that done? So you could say, for instance, I want to see, so this was my highest sale within Central. Right, so I can click on that point, and I can see that, okay, 18,000 is my highest sale. Around that time, no one was selling as much as Central, and so it was a complete outlier. Maybe almost a year later, the West sold higher as well, and I want to see how the others compare. So in this case, I'm just going to highlight that, and I can see that Central just sold a little bit more the previous year, and then you can see for the highest value within South, you can see how it compares to the rest. So for instance, recently the East region has been consistently hitting that above the almost 12,000 pounds in terms of, or dollars in terms of sales. How have we created that? So these are two worksheets. I'll show you one, and then we can come back in a second. So we have region, and we have week over the date. I've selected the filter because I wanted to only show 2 regions at a time. And then I have an above or below value. And that is the value there. And we could say I want that to be 10,000. You can see that changing straight away. And then I created a calculation, which is above or below just show that quickly. So if the sum of sales is greater or equal to the value that I have on my parameter, and I have it's orange if it's true, and it's false if it's not, or it's false and gray if it's not. And I have the dashed line there. And then within the dashboard, what I've done was to say, okay, I want to use a parameter. In this case, the source worksheets will be 2 worksheets because I don't want to be constrained by only showing the reference line, only changing the reference line in one area. I wanted the ability to change that in either of them. I want to use that parameter, which is going to be my above or below, and I want to target a specific sum of sales field, and that the aggregation is going to be sum. And in this case, I've changed that from a select to hover because I feel like that it needs that level of interaction. These particular last 2 examples, I feel like they're going to be really useful, and I'm looking forward to see what other people within the community and Tableau users are going to be using these for. I'd love to see how you're applying that. This is an interesting one as well. I'll start with the chart below, and it used to be something that I really enjoyed whenever I trained new users. This used to be part of the combo course at Tableau. So if you ever taken the 3-day course, this used to be one of the charts that you had to build, because it kind of puts everything together. So you're going to work with a parameter, a reference line, 2 colors in the detail. Let's look at it first. So what we're looking at is anything past a specific date, it's going to be highlighted. So in this case, 1st of December, it's going to be in light, it's going to be before, and then in darker color is going to be after. And of course, you could change that here as well. You can say, for instance, I want to change the value for, say, December 2015. And this used to be how Tableau would allow you to change that parameter. You had to go and pick a date and allow you to change how that would look like within the visualization. The visualization is built by having sum of sales in the rows, month of order date in the columns, and we have the category, the first one, and then we add the before or after as a second color. In terms of the way that we created this, so if I look at it, it's going to be the before or after. It's going to use a date. So let me show you the date first. So the date parameter is just a current value. It doesn't really matter what it is. So I'm just going to change that to be, and I've changed the display format because I want to use it elsewhere. And then I want to say I want to use before or after. So let me show you what that looks like. So if they truncate month over the date, there were 2 ways of doing this, and this used to be the trick on the combo course. So you could new users Tableau could learn about it. Why am I using a date truncate? I could potentially put a range within the parameter and then allow you to just move month by month, because as you can see, my view is on a month by month basis. Now the problem is if my data gets updated and I forget to update the parameter, that may not work. So I prefer to just use the order date. So I'm truncating the date to a month level. That's my order date. If it's greater or equal to date, then after, else, before, and you've noticed that on the color legend. Now you might be asking, why is he using an attribute to do that? Let me show you. If I take that away, that breaks. It's no problem. I'm just going to bring before or after. And can you see how it is a little bit broken, so there's no continuity on the line? So the line stops there, which is there in November 2016, and then it starts there, which is December 2016. There's no continuity within the line because we're now moved from a measure to a dimension, so essentially just creating that separation between the 2. And then if I go back to the visualization as it was, you can see that there's a natural continuity. So you have November there, and then it moves to December there, and there's a nice progression between the 2. So if you ever wonder why your line's broken, you can just wrap those up on an attribute, and that will allow you to change it. So let's go into the actual visualization. So I can click on a data point, and that's going to allow me to pass a different value. How is that done? We're going to go to our parameters, and I have before after, and before after 2 is the one at the top, and I'll show you that in a second. It's a select, it's a date, targeting month over the date, and no aggregation. Ignore the missing fields. That is missing on the other side, but actually I don't particularly care because I don't need that month over the date in there. So the way it's working is by clicking on the actual chart, I'm passing a value to the date. I'm passing a value to the color. So I'm selecting 1st of December, and so I'm passing that to that date truncate, and then I have that value within the parameter. And I can keep changing that as I want. And then at the top, what I've created was the ability of seeing sales before and after the time series that I'm looking at an aggregate level. So I just have a visualization with sum of sales, and I've put in the color after date parameter, so I can split between the two. And I have that, the after date parameter field. The after date parameter field, what it's doing is to say, and I'm just going to make that a little bit bigger, and yeah, that works almost. And what are we doing is, so instead of doing an if, I'm just going to IIF. So if order date is greater or equal to date, then after, and I've put a space in there because I want to concatenate that as a string, so I can use this as a label. If it's not, before space, and then I'm using a string to concatenate the date. And therefore, I'm able to have that within my label nice and tidy there. So after 2018 and before 2018 March, so 1st of March. So allows me to have that in a nice way, and it's kind of nice way of showing the visual and the split between the two. So for instance, if you're looking at it, so you had for the first period about 880,000, and then for the second period 1,400. So that's all I wanted to show you for the things that I've been building and some of the interactions in terms of using parameter actions. There's a couple of things I still want to be able to show, and I'm still working on that, things like maps and the ability of drilling up and down. But I think it's a really good chance to show you what the rest of the community has been building. Let's go and take a look at that. I can't thank enough Ryan, Ken, Kevin, Mark Reed, and Lindsay for allowing me to show all of this to you and sharing that some of the blogs that they've already put out so that you can use it. I'll start with Ryan's one. This is going to be one of my favorite ways of allowing our users and my users to change the granularity of the data that they're looking at. So they can, for instance, look at sales by month, sales by year, sales by day, sales by week. I'm just going to keep on a month level. How is this done? I'm not going to go into on the detail of that because Ryan has built a really nice blog, and I don't want to maybe make any mistakes in the way that he approached it. What I can tell you is that he uses a date truncation. So, and the truncation field is driven by what you select, and uses a secondary data source where you have, for D you have day, for M you have month, for W you have week, and for Y you have year. And essentially you're passing that value to the truncation of your data. Again, this is a really, really nice use of parameter actions, and I can't wait to start using it. So Ken, for those that don't know, is a Zen master, one half of the Flerich brothers, and is fascinating the amount of really wacky and clever ideas that he has about using the technology, using Tableau. So he's built this one which allows you to move a cursor. And you might be asking, well, that doesn't do a lot. Actually, it's going to do a lot if you know that you can. So for instance, use a map and you can move a cursor, you can start building games using Tableau. There's a number of use cases for this. Ken has created a really, really nice blog that I encourage you to go and take a read. Moving line. So that's kind of the same idea. So as I hover over this grid, I'm moving about a specific the grid, and I can start moving things around. So we have one fixed point, but then we can start thinking about ways of how to use that differently. Keeping with the move theme, I can see myself replacing the grid with the Pac-Man filled already so that I can start playing Pac-Man in Tableau. Can you imagine like the ability of just like playing Tableau? You could like be at work playing Tableau, Pac-Man, and if the boss comes around and goes, no, actually I'm using, this is Tableau, that's what I'm using. But in truth, no, that's already Super Mario. But I think this is going to be a really, really nice way of using Tableau. And what you're doing is just clicking the joystick at the top and moving the cursor where you want it to be. Again, I'm not going to delve into how Ken built this because I feel like his blog is a lot better in terms of the way that he explains it. So I encourage you to go and look at it. If you've been following Ken for a while, you know that he's been building these spheres for a while and he's played around with lots of kind of interactivity with that. And he used some of the techniques that he's learned there and then now applying the ability of hover over a grid to track where the sphere can change. So as you can see, as I move the cursor, and I think that's my laptop just is a little bit slow. As I move the cursor, the eye keeps moving. So I'm just going to try and center it as best as I can. Okay, so moving away from one Flareage brother to another, I think this is one that you definitely need to start using in terms of the ability of testing color combinations within your dashboards. So Kevin has created this wheel that allows you to switch the background color. You'll see this again created by Mark. The techniques are slightly different. So again, I encourage you to read their blog so you can understand how both of them approach the changing of the background. For me, one of the best things about Tableau is the multitude of ways that you can get to the same result. So having those two types of techniques for the same result, I think it's really, really good. So you can use parameter actions to swap things behind it. This one is also really interesting, is the ability of drilling down. So I have accessories, like a subcategory, and I want to click and see all my products again within subcategory. And then now I'm looking at all the products within that. And I can click none, and that's going to drill up so I can see it again. I can click phones, and I can see that Samsung and Apple iPhone 5, that must be an old data set, were my highest sold phones for the year. And of course, I can click none, and that allows me to drill back up. For Kevin, I think I only have about 3 or 4 examples. Kevin has written none other than 14 examples of using parameter actions. Again, I invite you to go and have a look through because there's so many things that you can now do with parameter actions that I feel like the blog's just going to keep coming and coming. This is kind of something that I was looking at as well over the weekend, the ability of kind of swapping levels within a map, similar to what I showed you with the category and the subcategory in what Kevin showed you Kevin, so the ability of drilling down within the scatter plot. So you could say, for instance, I want to click on a city, and that's going to allow me to drill down into city. And then I click on state, and that kind of brings it back up. I think this is really good, and the next step would be to create a way, and I think that can be achieved of clicking in the actual map and be able to filter up and down. But I think that it's a really, really clever way of using the ability of kind of using these toggles. Probably one of my favorite ones from Kevin. And I'm always looking for a good use case because I want to share that with all the top users that I know so that they can apply that at work. And I find this one is really, really clever. It's the ability of you hover over a bar and you can see the difference between that bar and all the other ones. So let me give you an example. If I hover over this bar here, I can see that, and I'm just going to change that quickly because I want you to be able to read that. So if I just change that to white, make it bold and make it a bit bigger, yeah, that works. I'm just gonna, okay. So I want you to be able to spot this. So if I hover over furnishings and I want to see that, for instance, for appliances, which is second from the top, I'm 15,827 away from beating them. If I look at, say, something like bookcases, I'm 36,000 away from meeting the same sales as copiers. So it's a really good ability for you to see where one particular sale is and then the difference to the next one, or the rest of the information, in this case subcategories within the view. So let me show you Mark Reed here from London as well is created really cool ways of looking at using parameter actions, and in this particular case he kind of uses containers as well. So again, there's a blog with a lot of information from Mark, so I invite you to go and read that. So let's press the play button so we can have a look at it. Okay, so we have a pie chart. How about the bar chart? That looks better. We could look at a tree map. Actually, let's keep this on a bar chart. We can toggle our tools. I don't like green. I want to pick something else. I want that in purple. So there you go. That's going to be my color. Oh, why did you not say that? Okay. And then I don't want to look at sales. I want to see the quantity. So allow me to select that, and I'm going to remove these. This is like your own show me, right? It's like, I think Mark probably took some suggestions from show me, because this looks like my own show me within my own dashboard. And then cool thing is to add a couple more filters. So in this case, we're looking at home office. How about if we looked at the sales for consumer? Allows me to select that and kind of remove that away from the view and then take that away. It's just a really nice way of allowing, almost kind of building applications within Tableau. So parameter actions, and then if you think about using set actions, containers, replace worksheets, all of that, it just puts the ability of creating this interaction to a whole new level. I sometimes even question if it's going to be called dashboards. Are we going to come up with a better name for that? I've mentioned to you that Mark had a different way of approaching backgrounds. This is it. So Mark created a way of changing colors and backgrounds, different from what Kevin did. So again, take a look at their blogs and compare the two techniques and see what works best for you. So if I want to change the chart and I want to pick something a little bit darker, I want to pick that one. And then the background, at the moment, do I make it? No, it's a bit too dark, so I'm going to try and pick it as light as possible. So that's going to be the ability of selecting and testing color combinations. Sometimes can be useful if you are working with a dashboard and you would like to try a few color combinations. This is a really nice technique to be able to just test it out, prove that it works, and it's like they complement each other, and then you can apply that to every single thing that you're working with. This one uses, kind of takes the idea that I showed you in terms of reference lines to a whole new level as well. What Mark created was a reference line at the top, or reference line with bands below. So once you click on the top chart, that adds a reference line. But then the clever thing is that allows you, so on the left hand side, to have 2, 4, or 6 quarters. So I want to look at my previous 6 quarters. Actually, 4 quarters probably works best. And then looking forward, I want to see just the next 2 quarters. And I can play with a combination on all of that. And I can click again just to move the reference line from where I want it. And then once I'm done and I know that I want 2 back, 4 forward, I can just click hide and that disappears, and the clutter goes away, so you don't have to have that in there. So I think that's a really neat way, again, of using reference line, but then also a band, and be able to change how the bands are working. So I really like this one from Mark. I will probably use this one as soon as a client that I'm working with upgrades, because I've been wanting to do this for ages. So for anyone that's been following Lindsay, she's the queen of set actions. She came up with all the use cases for set actions when it was first released, and she's just changed this a little bit to use parameter actions. So let me try and break that down, what it's doing. So start from the from the left-hand side, where you have sales by city. So you have all my sales there, and you're able to select that. Then the charts, the first one is cities with similar corporate sales, similar technology sales, and then within the state. And then you can look at how many similar cities you want to show. So you could select 6, you could select 2, you could select 4. Why is this useful? Okay, let's look at an example. I'm going to pick Houston. So Houston sits in 6th here for corporate sales. And if you're playing around with what if scenarios, so how much more do you need to sell to be able to become a top 5? So the difference between these two is going to be somewhere in the region of about 7,000. So what you need to find is an extra 7 or 8,000 to just to make it to top 5. Then here, what you also might be looking at, okay, so we are on number 7 in terms of technology. However, Chicago in Illinois, it's not that far away. So if we drop the ball in terms of sales around technology, we might be looking at dropping from 7 to 8 into 9. So it's really interesting to see things like benchmarking. And I've seen some of that being done, and I've done that with calculations, but this one uses calculations, but uses ranking index. And the ability of just passing that parameter action allows that to be a lot faster and really nice to interact with. And you'll see that in terms of Texas, Houston sells the most. How about Atlanta, Georgia? So Atlanta, Georgia, in terms of corporate sales, for instance, the example I was giving you, it seems like most of them are around 42 to 46. They're selling very closely. So if you are looking at a ranking table, you don't want to drop from the ranking table in terms of sales. Or if you're looking at different salespeople and you are trying to create kind of some competition across the cohort, you can see, okay, so you need to make sure that you're hitting those numbers so you don't drop down the table. And of course, you scroll all the way down and you pick, say, somewhere like Apple Valley within or Auburn in Alabama, and you can see that they don't sell a corporate sales or technology, and they are the 6th in terms of sales within Alabama. I'm just going to pick New York City, and they seem to buy like they are by far the ones in terms of top. And with that, so I again, Lindsay has created a blog on this. I invite you to go and have a read. This is what I wanted to show you in terms of what you can do with parameter actions. As I said, all the things that I showed you today from the community, this is already available, so you can have a look at it tomorrow. The other ones, I'll share you the workbook, and you'll be able to read some of the blogs as I publish them, so you can see how the techniques were done. I also invite you to go and check out Twitter, so you can follow Kevin, Mark, Ryan, Ken, and Lindsay, and I can't thank them enough for them to allowing me to showcase their examples as well. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have for the next 10 minutes or so. I think we have a couple of questions. Recording of the sessions. Do you want to take that?
Yes, as somebody had replied into the chat there, the recording of the sessions will be posted to our YouTube playlist, along with all the other Think Data Thursdays. So you can go back and watch all of the amazing Think Data Thursdays we've had in the past, as well as this one today.
Okay. Is there any questions?
Not seeing anything else come through.
Awesome.
There's one question about the workbooks being available, and you said you were going to share those after this, correct, David?
Yeah, so I'll be sharing that. If not today, by the weekend it will be available, and it will make it available both on the forum. I'll share on Twitter and just make sure that everyone can download it.
Excellent. Appreciate it. All right, is there any more questions out there for David before we let him go? We have a question from Steph. Will the scatterplot drill down workbook be shared as well?
That's already available. So that's from Kevin, and you should be able to just go on Twitter and look up for Kevin Fleridge, and his blog is already written, and you have all the technique, the way that he built it, so you can have a look at it today.
All right, David. Well, it looks like we got all the questions answered. Thank you so much again for presenting this Think Data Thursday today. Again, just for follow-up, the recording will be posted to our um, YouTube playlist along with all the other Think Data Thursdays recording. David will also be sharing out his workbooks that he used today via Twitter and the community post. So check there for those resources. And thank you again, David.
Thank you
And
very
with
much
that,
for the opportunity.
yeah. And with that, we'll have a good day, everybody.
Thank you very much. Have a great day. Bye-bye.